Hi, thank you for joining us on the district today. My name is Janice Stevens. I'm the superintendent in the School District of Superior, and today I asked Barb Pezzi, our coordinator of data and assessment, to join us on the program. We're going to be talking a little bit about, well, quite a bit actually, about new report cards for every school in the state of Wisconsin and why this is happening right now, what this means, and what the community and staff members should be aware of. So, Barb, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, Jen.
Well, first of all, what is your understanding of why the state of Wisconsin moved to having report cards for every school in our state?
Well, I believe part of the No Child Left Behind waiver we had to come up with. The state had to come up with a way to determine the accountability for schools in terms of serving our students.
Right.
And there are a variety of different measures that they're looking at
in order to do that. Right, and part of that No Child Left Behind, just for people that might not be familiar with that acronym, what that means is long ago President Bush put in place an act that was No Child Left Behind. Every child was supposed to be proficient or advanced, which I know Barb and I think would be fantastic. Mm-hmm. We also recognize that's incredibly challenging. So once that act or that law sunsetted, we had to have something new passed, and that's why we had to get waivers and all sorts of different things happening. So going right specifically to the report card now, every one of our schools is rated in some different areas. Could you talk about what are the different areas that we're rated on?
Sure. There's two areas really that are calculated. The first area is an area that has 4 priorities: student achievement in both reading and mathematics, student growth in both reading and mathematics, closing achievement gaps, and on-track and post-secondary readiness, which we'll talk about graduation, attendance, and a variety of other things depending on the grade level and building. And then the other part of that is the student engagement indicators, which talks about the test participation, how many students actually participated in this test, your absenteeism rate, and the dropout rate depending on your building.
Okay, that first section you talked about, I understand that every school will be rated on a score from 0 to 100 on that.
Yes.
And then is it correct that those other 3 indicators, the dropout rate, the absentee, that will count against us if we don't meet some criteria?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. In that first part, you do get a 0 out of 100. And if that was all that we had to look at, that's great. But then when you get down to student engagement, if we don't make that, each of those 3 areas can be a deduction of 5 points.
Okay, so it's pretty significant.
Yes, it is.
Okay. When we, Barb and I had an opportunity to get some training on this piece, and they gave us a rating scale of how schools are going to be evaluated. Can you talk a little bit about that 5-leveled rating scale?
Yes. Based on those calculations we just talked about and any deductions, if there were any, it would come out to a number from 0 to 100, and they are in 5 different levels. The top being significantly exceeds expectations, and you'd need a score of 83 to 100. The next is exceeds expectations, 73 up to the 82.9. Meets expectations is 63 up to 72.9. Meets few expectations, 53 all the way up to 62.9, and 0 to 52.9 would be the fails to meet expectations.
Okay, and luckily our school district fell into the categories where we weren't identified as a school of focus or a school of priority. Our rating here in Superior came out at 3 different levels: exceeding expectations, meeting expectations, and meeting a few expectations. And again, I wish we were graded as a whole district, but it was individual buildings, and as the community knows, our buildings are very different. Obviously, a high school is significantly different from an elementary, but we were still put in the same kind of a rating schedule. So having kind of given an overview of what this is, how do you see possibly that we could use this information? What are your thoughts on that?
You know, we always try to get better. We're always looking at ways to improve our student achievement and closing our student gaps, showing student growth. However, I guess we have to be careful about looking at this and putting all of our eggs in this one basket, because when we look at the student growth, what the state neglects to do, I believe, is look at the same group of kids. It's not a cohort group. So what they do is they look at last year's students, how they performed in comparison to the next year's students and how they performed, and they measure our growth based on that. And that just doesn't quite feel right to me, because where one group of students might be and where they will be the next year could be entirely different than another group of students. It's how far did we take the same group of students?
Right, I think that's so well said. What we try to focus on as a district is when a teacher gets a group of learners in their classroom, how far can they bring them by the end of the year? The state wants to look at it as comparing one group of kids with a totally different group of kids and yet another group of kids, and then to try to come up with some kind of a score. It would have been nice if we were evaluating the exact same group of kids and how far we brought those learners. And I understand I'm not a statistician, but there's a lot of work that has gone into this. I can say our district does an incredible amount with data in trying to make decisions. So while this is one piece, maybe you could share what are the other systems we're using to really make choices about student improvement and what we need to do for the kids.
Yeah, we're really excited. This is our first year of really digging into a new database which houses all of our assessment data. So we can go in and look at a particular student, we can look at a particular subgroup, we can look at a particular building, and certainly district-wide. We have in there our state tests, and we can look over the last 7 years, I think we have in there right now. We have the last couple of years of the NWE MAP test that we've taken in both math and now this year in reading. We have some elementary that goes a little bit into the middle school in terms of literacy, our AIMS data. And what's really nice about that is we can really pinpoint in on a particular subgroup of students. We can track the same cohort group of kids, which really helps us figure out if we're putting in an intervention or we're putting in a program for those particular students with any particular deficits, that we can track whether that intervention is working or not, whether that program is working or not.
Right. So that kind of in-depth, timely data is really what's going to help us improve.
Yes.
Interesting enough, on the news this morning, a report came out that while some districts won't see what their data truly is yet, maybe a few years from now it will be. I think that's probably true. Every year I see our teachers and our administrators sharpening their skills to really fine-tune what are we doing in the classroom or for programming to support our kids. So I would expect a few years from now that while our scores are acceptable right now, that we too would have our scores increase. I highlighted a few areas that the state is red flagging some schools. One is an area called priority and the other is focus. Can you talk a little bit about what are those two, what does that mean for those districts? And again, our district has not been flagged, but what is your understanding of what that means for other districts?
Well, when they take all of the scores across the state and the report cards, I should say, they take the bottom 5%, and any school district who lands, any school who lands in that bottom 5% is automatically a priority school. And from the way that I understand it, the system is designed that there will always be the bottom 5%, regardless of how well they are achieving.
Correct, I understand that as well.
And then the focus school would be if you have a very large subgroup performing, low performing subgroup, and very large achievement gaps, that would be in the bottom 10%,
Okay.
and those would be your
So
focus.
in our district, a subgroup could be students that are economically disadvantaged, and if there was a large gap between how they perform compared to students that don't have an economic disadvantage, then we could be a group that was flagged. Okay.
Yes.
Again, I just want to say we have not been flagged. Our scores are adequate to frankly high, but again, the bigger piece is really digging into data to make sure every child is getting to that proficient or advanced level. That's what it always comes down to. Anything else as you're looking through the different report cards, things you think our district should be wary of, or things the community might be interested in?
Well, you know, the other thing that came up when I was really digging into these report cards is that whole idea of absenteeism. based on how we have to report to the state when kids are present or absent, they don't really give us a choice on for what reason. So for our athletic programs, when they're out of class, they're out of class. And we sort of get penalized for when kids are not physically in the building, physically getting instructional. We make up for that in other areas with all of our technology, with all of our website and flipped classrooms. You know, we get the instruction to the kids, and we shouldn't be penalized for that.
I agree, and I think we've learned something on how we track what does present and not present mean at the state level. For our purposes, we just thought, well, if they're not in class, they're not present. It isn't as simple as that, which I think it probably should be that simple, but it isn't. And I agree. If we're being rated on how well we do, that's fine. But it seems to me some of our schools got a double penalty because our data was showing one thing, and because we didn't meet a percentage that the state set, we lost some points for that. But we've learned something on what we need to do, and of course we believe that attendance is critical. We obviously push for that, but there's times where kids have to be out of class for very good reasons, and we try to support that outside of school. So it's a learning opportunity for us. Something else I think that the district should be mindful of is, while we have a certain test called the Wisconsin Concept and Knowledge Examination, we have that test. Our kids are currently in the process of taking that test. We have no choice about not taking that test. It's already been identified that that test is very weak. Our state superintendent has said publicly it's not a very good exam. So what they've done is keep that same test, but yet change the scoring for it. Now, in my mind, that doesn't seem fair or appropriate, but some things we just have to live with as a district. Again, what we're going to do is continue on our same path, trying to find out what kids need to be successful, whether it's programming or intervention, and to get those things in place for them. Well, something for the public to know, how you can access our report cards is going to be on our website. We thought you'd be able to go right to the Department of Public Instruction. I have tried to find out exactly where the link is for getting to our own report cards, and I was not able to find it. So we're putting it on our website. So if you go to our front page, you'll see a little information on the new school report cards. You can click on that and to get detailed information on what's happening in our district. I would remind the public, as you're looking through these report cards, please keep in mind all of the things we're trying to do to support our kids and our staff so that we will be successful. And again, our mission is that every child will have the tools they need to be successful when they leave us, and we're working hard to make sure that's true for every single child in the school district of Superior. Any final thoughts?
Nothing more.
Okay, well, thanks very much for joining me on the district to help people understand our new report cards. And thanks to everyone in the audience for joining us on the district this morning. Just a reminder, if you would like a program on a certain topic, you simply have to call the board office at 715-394-8710. Say the topic you'd like to know more about, and we'll put a show on that topic. And thanks for joining us on the district.